Welcome to the future of less work. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today we're going to ask how to make ourselves unforgettable in a world of work that is no longer about physical presence. Today, doing great at work is not enough. In fact, being excellent and invisible might be the most dangerous combination in your career. Because let's face it, we used to reward visibility. Be seen at the office, show up in a meeting, drop by your manager's desk. But when presence became digital and fragmented across video, chat, calendar, shared documents, visibility changed, which is why presence changed too, the kind that helps you get noticed, trusted, and promoted. Lorraine K. Lee is the best-selling author of Unforgettable Presence, and she claims presence is one of the most important skills in the modern workplace. Lorraine, welcome to the future of less work.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So tell me, why'd you write a book about presence?
It wasn't on my vision board to write a book, but when the opportunity presented itself and I thought about my career and the things I wish I had known back then, presence came up. And when I was at LinkedIn, I was a founding editor there, and sort of how you described, I was really hardworking. I worked on high priority projects. I was well liked. And you would think all these things on paper would lead to a promotion or some sort of advancement in the company. And unfortunately, it didn't. And it was only after I left LinkedIn that I started thinking more, okay, what could I have done better? What went wrong? And I realized that presence in the more traditional sense was missing. And then a few months later, COVID happened. And that's when I really started thinking, oh, presence is not just about how others see us, but also where others see us. And it's about our video and virtual presence. It's about our LinkedIn presence. It's about our presence really when we're not even face to face. And it's about those smaller moments that happen in a day that are equally as important as those high stakes situations that really allow us to shine at work.
So you actually started this conversation with yourself, right, even before COVID. So this wasn't necessarily just about we're working not necessarily in the same space. You're saying even when I do show up at the office, right, being good at my job is not enough. If you look back at that time, and I do want to circle back to the more updated, work environment. But if you do look back to that time and you're telling yourself, here's some things I should have done differently, what would those be?
A lot of mindset shifts. So you mentioned at the intro, oh, hard work is not is unfortunately not enough. You can work as hard as you want, but it will only get you so far if people don't see that work. I have the
Why
ability.
wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they see the work?
If you are the so the mindset shift that was really helpful for me was to become the CEO of your own career. And what happened at LinkedIn is I let a lot of things happen to me and I made certain assumptions. So, yes, maybe your manager might see your hard work, maybe your immediate team members, but how is the senior stakeholder or decision maker going to see your work if you're not the one talking about it? We can't rely on our managers, even if they're great managers, we can't rely on them to care about our careers as much as we do. And so it takes that level of proactivity to let people know what, in fact, we are doing and that we even exist.
So, okay, so let's take that example one step further because I'm trying to imagine a situation where, you're an employee, you're preparing the document, maybe the PowerPoint, but ultimately your manager is the one who goes into the meeting and presents it. What can you do about that?
You're saying if the manager is sort of taking,
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
it's not always up to you, right? I mean, the fact that
sure.
senior management doesn't know what you're doing is because they're removed from your day-to-day job.
Yeah, well, I think if your manager is the one going into that meeting, making sure they're equipped with all the information and letting them know, like, I would love to get more visibility in these meetings. I know I'm not able to attend, but if you wouldn't mind shouting me out here or saying XYZ, I think that's one approach. Again, we're talking about sort of the digital space as well in terms of presence. There is a way that you can send out an email or send a Slack channel and it comes from you, right? It doesn't have to be in the meeting that people see your work, that you talk about something that you did, something you learned about that can apply to another team.
Do you think that that's actually an interesting point? Do you think that the digital presence, the fact that we actually are more virtual, allows us to be more visible because we can attend? So, for example, conference rooms no longer have walls. So sometimes you can attend in meetings that we used to not be able to attend.
I think it does, and me as an introvert, I do like that that we're leaning more into the digital spaces now because I do feel more comfortable writing something out versus perhaps raising my hand in a meeting. So I think it's allowed me for sure to be more visible.
Do you think that, so for those of us who are maybe feel more comfortable behind a screen versus physically in the meeting, do you think speaking up in a virtual meeting is easier than speaking up in a room?
I do, if the meeting is run well. So, for example, one thing I like to say is if there's more than four people in your meeting virtually, to make sure to have rules of engagement. So, to say, okay, we're going to raise our virtual hand and we're going to use the chat. If you have a meeting of 20 people virtually and there's no guardrails and everyone's muting and unmuting whenever they feel like it, that's going to be hard to speak up. But hopefully, with virtual meetings, there is a little bit more structure that is needed in order to make sure that all voices are heard.
Okay, so let's talk about other structure tips maybe or ideas. So how do we build visibility when the workplace is no longer a place?
So Slack, I mentioned before, is a key one. There's so much communication every day happening over chat. And it's not just, though, to be in chat for the sake of being in chat, or it's not to send an email for the sake of sending an email. So these digital channels, they're really important, but we have to be thoughtful about them. So, how are we communicating thoughtfully? How are we creating that executive summary at the top? In order for people to realize that we are strong collaborators, strong communicators, and that people will enjoy working with us. There's so many people who shoot off an email, right? We're go, go, go. Workplace is disjointed, so many things happening where we are just jotting down sort of stream of consciousness. And I interviewed Kim Scott, amongst many other experts for the book. And she talks about this concept of an email haiku, how your email should fit on the screen of a smartphone without someone needing to scroll. How can we be
Hmm.
so thoughtful with the way that we communicate, with our presence in all these different places, that people realize, oh, Lorraine has put in some thought here. We're not having to do unnecessary back and forths for clarification. And she's being really thoughtful with every touch point that she has with me.
So I love the email haiku, and I think you also said thoughtful as an also value add because it feels like there's a lot of noise, and you bring in AI into this, and it's almost like my bots talking to your bot, and they're, your bot's posting and mine is commenting, which is like completely useless. That's not presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We want to be, I think people can tell too, right? When you're intentional and thoughtful versus, oh, I'm just going on autopilot or just saying something for the sake of saying something.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, what about presence in if you're actually working hybrid and remote? Do you think there's a different kind of presence that you need to show up to actually, if you're like in a mixed team, maybe the people who are physically in the room or physically showing up at the office, um, there's nothing we can do, and they will have a stronger presence.
There's definitely advantages to being in person, right? There's the proximity bias. Your manager sees you. They say something, and at the end of the meeting, oh, who wants to volunteer for this project? And the people in person might have the opportunity, right, to raise their hand before the virtual people can be at that meeting or make their voice heard. So there's advantages in that sense, but that's why it's so important if you're leading a hybrid team to be really thoughtful about those two different situations where I'm not going to ask people to just volunteer on the spot. I'm going to send an email, let everyone know within 24 hours to let me know if you're interested. And then I'm going to make a fair decision based on that. If you are virtual, yes, it might be harder if many of your coworkers are in person. And again, we can take things into our own hands a little bit here. So we might need to set up more one-on-one meetings to get to know each other and remind people that we're here. We might need to find the more extroverted buddy or the in-person buddy so that when we're in a meeting, we can let them know, hey, can you make sure that, I have something to say here. Can you make sure that people in the room turn their attention towards me? Or if you're leading that meeting, to turn to the virtual attendees first.
That, it's really interesting because I'm listening to you describe this and I'm thinking like there's two parallel. ideas here. One is us as people who need to show up and have our, manage our presence. But you're also saying those of you that are running virtual meetings or managing dispersed teams, right? Consciously thinking through how to help people show up, even if they're not there.
Exactly.
That's yeah, it's really interesting. And I know you have a framework in the book, right? I think it's the 4 E's. Do you want to walk us through kind of the, your how do you explore, establish, envision, and excel?
Oh, sure. So in relation to LinkedIn,
Yes, please.
perfect. Yeah. So I came up with the 4 E's because LinkedIn, such an important place to have a presence. I know a lot of people think, oh, LinkedIn job site, right? But it's become so much more. You know this as well, posting and being really active on there. It's really become our virtual water cooler, our virtual landing page, and really our ultimate virtual office. So this is a place that we can and want to show up, right? People go to LinkedIn to learn about us, to find out about us. So we want to make sure that we have a LinkedIn presence. And I think what's so powerful about LinkedIn too is that you can create a really positive impression and a really strong presence for yourself without ever having to meet this person, right? Without ever having to talk to them on video, without ever having to meet them in person. Now, eventually, hopefully, you do end up turning that relationship into an actual meeting. But I've had people who come to me before, before we've met, they say, wow, you have such a strong LinkedIn presence. And they make certain assumptions about my credibility and my competence through that. So wanted to call that out, that that's a very powerful thing and very powerful tool in our arsenal. To
Yeah,
your
and it's
question,
interesting because you and I met this way, right? I mean, we
yes.
met through LinkedIn, and we did chat before
Yep.
this particular conversation. But eh, you don't need to be an influencer or somebody trying to build a business or something like that to actually have presence on LinkedIn, right? I think part of your message is it's part of your brand, right? Even if you're a full-time employee somewhere, why is that? Why is
Yeah,
it
you
important?
read my mind. I think a lot of people get hung up thinking, "Oh, I do have to be like wanting to grow, 1 million followers or wanting the most engagement," but that's not the case at all. It really is part of your brand, part of your reputation, and when you think about the fact that we all have a brand, right? We frame it in terms of a reputation. Well, okay, now we can either be really thoughtful and intentional about it, or we can kind of leave it to chance and let other people define it for us. So to go back to your question about the framework, I came up with this because a lot of people get really nervous posting on LinkedIn, which by the way is completely natural. Even when I worked at LinkedIn, I was very nervous to post, even though it was part of my job, right? It's tied to your professional identity. We want to sound smart, make sure there's no mistakes, things like that. And so this is a framework to help guide people to feel more confident. And so the first E you mentioned, explore. So that's post 1 through 30. This is really about experimenting and not worrying about having the perfect content strategy or knowing who your audience is or knowing what topic you want to speak on. We really just simply have to get used to the idea of posting more frequently, posting at all, right? And posting consistently and frequently. The next, establish 31 through 60. Okay, now we kind of have a sense where have some data, like what are people engaging with? What are people commenting with? What do I like to post even? And so let's double down on that and create a more consistent posting routine, because consistency is so, so critical when it comes to LinkedIn and also building an audience and building that content posting muscle. And then after,
And I might add, it's actually important for you as a tool to discover what you stand for, which is a strong part of um, con- well, creating your brand as opposed to just letting it, show up.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, well said. And then envision is the third step. So that's 61 through 90. And that is, okay, again, even more analytics now. We're starting to maybe make some connections, meet people. People are reaching out to us because they're interested in what we have to say. And now we're meeting strangers and becoming friends and figuring out how to collaborate. So that's where we see even more momentum. And I think is really the magic behind LinkedIn, not just oh, I got a lot of engagement, but oh, who are the people who I can meet and collaborate with? And then the last is to excel. So posts, 90 plus is really about doubling down on what's working and really leaning into it. At this point, you should feel more comfortable and having more fun with it. Hopefully, it should be fun as well, I think. And so those are the 4 E's to think about to hopefully give people some guidance if they're wondering, oh my gosh, how long do I have to do this before I'm starting to feel comfortable and okay with this?
And I think it's I almost want to ask you again, if I go back to you, well, you worked at LinkedIn, right? But if you think of yourself for a moment as that, employee in a company, and I'm almost tempted to say, well, why do I care, right? What is it about um, get creating visibility, not just for my manager and my manager's manager and kind of my work ecosystem, to actually create visibility at the broader level? Why is that important?
There's a few reasons why that's really important. So, the first reason that was most surprising to me, so while I did post while I was at LinkedIn, I didn't really lean into it until I actually joined the company that I joined after that. And one thing that was really surprising is that the more you post on LinkedIn, the more you find your voice and you gain confidence. That was something that I brought to my corporate job that was very powerful. The second thing is, okay, now my company sees that I'm posting, they see that I'm okay, and willing to put myself out there. I got opportunities internally because they saw that I was willing to be an external face. Oh, Lorraine, do you want to present at the all hands meeting? Or, oh, the biggest one is my coworker ended up being sick or out of town for this media roundtable. Oh, Lorraine, like you can, do you want to step in and join? And so externally, you'll also find opportunities, right, to speak, maybe podcast interviews. So it's organic brand awareness for your company, and also, just getting the word out there about your company and having it be associated with you. I think is very powerful
Yeah, and I
anytime you
think you're
see
saying it builds
stuff.
your brand internally as
Yeah.
well because people
Hmm.
see you, they see
Yeah.
you learning, they see you talking about important, things that they might even learn from you.
Exactly. And then people are visiting your profile, right? You join a new company, your teammates are looking at you. They want to learn about you. This is a little bit more of an extreme example, but I talked to someone and she had met the CEO in person. She's like, "Wow, he had a great presence. He seemed really impressive." And then she wants to add him on LinkedIn. She goes to his page. It's bare bones, no profile picture. Now there's a disconnect and you're like, was he really as impressive as I thought? Because now you're forming this perception based on his virtual presence. So there's also that aspect too, where you sort of want those two things to be aligned.
Yeah, that reminds me. So I have the podcast in my Forbes column, and I get a lot of these PR pitches, and I will admit this, right? I mean, I don't think it's a big secret. I check them on LinkedIn, right? And so you get this PR pitch about somebody who's supposedly an expert on something or other, and then you go into their profile and they have no presence. And so you can't, I always say when you write your resume, don't tell me you're great, show me you're great, right? So it's the same thing. So you're basically saying your online presence today is part of who you are, even
Exactly.
if
And
you're an employee, a salaried
yes.
employee, right?
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and to that point, there's a stat that I cite in the book by the Rain Group that says that 82% of buyers will look up a seller on LinkedIn before replying to their outreach or their prospecting efforts. And we're not all salespeople, right? But your experience really demonstrates that, yeah, we get a message from someone and we don't know who they are. Oh, is this person legitimate? First thing, go to LinkedIn before a website. And that's how we
Yeah.
make our judgments.
Yeah, 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 that's right. And I will add to all the reasons that you mentioned that ultimately our career life cycles are shortening. And so at any given time, it's not just about what you do today. It's also are you realizing what's changing in your ecosystem, in your profession, and in just things that are kind of shifting and happening. And having an online presence creates a network that will bring you those gifts of the things that you didn't know to look for or ask for, or even that they existed.
Yeah, companies will come and go, but your brand is forever, as I like to
Yeah.
say.
Awesome. So if you're someone kind of mid-career feeling stuck or unseen, what's the one small move that they could do today listening to us? And
I
I'm
would
going to assume for a second that don't tell them, okay, post on LinkedIn. They're like, they haven't,
Yeah, that's
they're
actually a bigger
watching.
step, I
They're
think,
not
yeah.
active yet. That's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
small move.
I think that's a bigger step. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and one of the things I'm really happy about in the book is that, a lot of practical advice, but one of the first things apart from that mindset shift of becoming the CEO of your own career, chapter 2 talks about video presence. Video can really be a superpower, and especially for the introverts. because a lot of people, despite it being so many years post COVID and post going into remote work, a lot of people have not been thoughtful about it. So if you can create a strong video presence, know how to connect with people on the other side of the camera, know how to start off a call, not on autopilot, but really as a way to connect with folks, if you know how to present impactfully virtually, I think these are really powerful ways to stand out. And again, video will always be a touch point for many of us, even if we are in person. So to
So
make
you mean video presence in meetings, not kind of putting on LinkedIn or shorts on YouTube, right?
yep, video
So
presence in meetings
okay,
on your
so what are some tips for creating a video presence? We did talk about make sure you're heard, even though you're on video. Even though maybe the meeting manager isn't that good and they're not making sure everybody's called upon. What
sure.
else?
So I came up with a framework called the T method. So T stands for tech, energy, and aesthetics. I came up with this framework because it can feel still a little bit overwhelming being on video, so I wanted to simplify it. So tech, you want to make sure that you have the right hardware and software. So of course, that's things like your camera, your microphone, maybe noise canceling software, right? Whatever you need to make sure that you are being seen and heard clearly. And then energy, this is things like, are you using your body language impactfully and effectively on camera? Again, how are you starting off calls? Are you turning off autopilot small talk? Are you engaging in actually meaningful small talk? Are you how are you how's your presence basically on video, and are people feeling drawn in by you, right? And then aesthetics, this can be your environment, so your background, your foreground, even with some technology, the lighting, what you're wearing. So all of these things have an impact and can form an impression in someone's mind, can help strengthen your presence. Again, without you really needing to say anything. We make those quick snap judgments, right? If I hopped on this call today and I was in a dark room and maybe I wasn't taking up a majority of the video screen, maybe my head was really small down here, I'm not going to look quite right. I'm not going to look very impressive, right? So again, small tweaks with big impact.
That's really, really important. I really hope everybody just took notes because I think that in too many cases, we show up on video in a way that we wouldn't show up to a physical meeting or interview, and we think it's okay, right? So you're saying no, it's not, right? If you wouldn't um, wear or invite somebody into this room or wear these clothes when you walk into a conference room or something like that, don't show up on video this way.
Yeah, a lot of people they think that video is sort of like the second best option, right? It's not the ideal. Like we all want to be in person, but the fact of the matter is that video is a huge part of our lives. And to your point, like usually we're at home and we're relaxed, so we're going to maybe not be as put together or thoughtful as we are in person. But it is again can be a very strong superpower if you put some thought behind it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think we learned in COVID is driving to work used to be a transition for us, right? We used to be able to kind of shift from the home persona of whoever we are, and then kind of walk into the office, and we actually put our nice clothes on, and we wore certain kind of shoes, and we walk in the office, and we had our routines like the coffee, the say hello in the corridors, and that shifted who we were and how we showed up. And some of the problem today is you're actually crossing the room, sitting at your desk with the bed right behind you,
Yep,
and
yep,
you don't have time and you haven't shifted your energy and the how you
yep,
show up.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so important. Okay. So here's how I usually wrap up these conversations because we're really good at giving answers. It's what we've been taught to do. But with the future of work and everything that's happening around us, what I want to really ask you is what are the questions you think we should be asking ourselves these days about the future of work?
The first one that comes to mind that people ask me sometimes too is around AI and presence and how those two things will play together. And is AI going to take over? And all of those questions I think people have about what does that mean for my job. So that's the main one that comes to mind.
Okay. And what do you think, by the way, is the answer
So my answer,
to
yeah, it's like, oh, is she going to ask that?
AI and presence?
So I alluded to this at the end of the book, but I believe that presence will be even more of a critical skill. It's something that AI can't create for you, that interpersonal relationship, how you're showing up. It can help with things, right? So I write an email and AI can help clean it up, but I still need to know how to write and to read that and be like, does that sound strange or does that sound like what I wanted it to sound like? And similarly with presence, it's really those human skills, those soft skills that are going to be extra critical, the ways that we collaborate cross functionally, as an example. So there's a place for AI. And I think, definitely presence is going to continue to be very important, if not even more important as AI picks up.
It's actually a really interesting question because it's crossed my mind right now that we had all these avatar softwares that you could show up as your digital self, but you're not really there. And I think for a while, I thought they were going to take over, and I discovered that um, people like the real stuff that includes actually the non-polished version of how I open my podcast and stumble on a word
Yeah,
versus, letting an avatar um, read the text, if you will.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. People in a world where technology is becoming even more prevalent and just integrated into our day to day, it's the people aspect, the little stumbles that make us human, right?
Yep. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine, for joining me today. For more on Lorraine K. Lee and her book, Unforgettable Presence, check out the links in the episode description. Thank you for joining us on The Future of Less Work. And remember, your best people do not work because they have to, nor because you measure them on it, nor because you tell them what to do. They work because by working for you, they're also achieving what's important for them in life. Till next time.